However, when we do tshuva, first of all, when we do tshuva, we ask Hashem for forgiveness, Hashem forgives us. So that cancels the punishment. Just for those that are online, this is not the regular Wednesday class by Rabbi Patil. He couldn't make it today. So we're learning about Yom Kippur according to Chassidus, and we're learning about the Viduy Dvar, the verb of confession. So when a person does tshuva, there are a number of things that you accomplish through tshuva. Number one, Hashem forgives you, so there's no consequences, no punishment. Or number two, it's not the order of one and two, I'm just saying one thing, two things. Another thing is that because I do tshuva, then the relationship with Hashem is restored the way it used to be. By doing Aveira, I created a distance between me and Hashem. By doing tshuva, I'm becoming closer to Hashem as it was before I committed that Aveira. Then we know that when we do an Aveira, it causes a certain damage to the neshama, causes a certain damage in the spiritual realm, which is called the pagam, a defect. So the ultimate goal with tshuva is not one of these things and not two of these things, but all of these things should be accomplished. There should be no punishment. Hashem should love me the same way that he did before. By doing tshuva, I should correct the damage that's in my soul. By doing tshuva, I can correct the damage that I caused in the spiritual realm, and so on. So being that one of the things that happens in the spiritual realm is that I create a klipa. And that klipa is a force of evil, of negativity, that generates more klipa in me and in the world around me. So therefore, we want to get rid of it. I said, if we can use an example of the Gash physical world, it's like having infection, a bacteria, some sort of a germ in the body that generates negative things and could cause a lot of damage to the body. So you want to get rid of it. You want to get out of the body. So through tshuva, you get rid of it. Being that we explained that the klipa has a neshama and a guf, we want to get rid of both the neshama, the nefesh of the klipa, the soul of the klipa, and the guf of the klipa. So first of all, we explained last time that this is one of the reasons why it says Aveira Gereris Aveira. When you do one Aveira, it usually leads to another Aveira. Because when a person creates a klipa, that klipa itself wants me to do more Aveiras. And therefore, that force affects me that I have an urge to do an Aveira. The force can create situations and circumstances that would be challenging for me to do an Aveira. So therefore, we really want to get rid of that klipa, not just do tshuva and be forgiven. We want that the klipa that I created should be gone, should be eliminated. How is it eliminated? So the answer is, how is it created? So the klipa has a nefesh and a guf. The nefesh, the soul of the klipa, was created by my Aveira, and the guf of the klipa was created by my Aveira. But my Aveira itself also had a soul and a body. What is it? The act of the Aveira is the body. The passion, the pleasure that I have when I do this Aveira, that's the soul. So if a person is eating food that's treif, person is involved in lashon hara, person is involved in, God forbid, hurting someone else that they hate. So there's a certain pleasure in doing what I'm doing. That's the soul of the klipa. The actual physical act is the body of the klipa. So therefore, when a person does tshuva, what does tshuva really mean? I regret what I did, which means I'm reversing, sort of taking back that pleasure that I had. Instead of pleasure, now I feel the opposite of pleasure. I'm pained by the fact that I did this negative thing. So in a sense, when I delete the pleasure, I destroyed the pleasure that I had, that destroys the soul of the klipa. Follow? If the neshama of the klipa was created for my pleasure, so when I reverse that and I sort of extract the pleasure, I have the opposite of pleasure now. So therefore, that's the tshuva charata. I regret what I did. So as a result of that, the soul of the klipa becomes destroyed. How do we get rid of the body of the klipa? So really, it should be the same thing. I have to undo the act that I did. In fact, in halacha, if a person that they stole money from someone, the tshuva is not complete until I return the money that I stole. That's the undoing the act. But spiritually, how do we undo the act? So the Gemara says the following, and I'll soon explain it in detail. I'm looking at on the sheet on page number number 13 on this sheet. The sheet is number 14, but on the sheet is the number 13, which says Ba'isei Mokim, Ba'isei Isha, the same place, the same woman. Yeah. Which sheet? Page 14 in the booklet. The Yom Kippur booklet. It means that the Gemara says like this, the ultimate tshuva is if a person finds himself in the same circumstances as he did when he did the Aveira. He's in the same place, he has the same opportunity to do the Aveira, and it's actually the same woman, everything is the same. But this time, instead of doing it, he controls his passion and he doesn't do the Aveira. So by doing that, he's undoing the act that he did. And that destroys the body of the klipa. Which means the same would be another thing. Let's say I embarrass somebody in public. I ask them for forgiveness and everything, but how do I undo what I did? If there's the same opportunity, I had the opportunity again to say something and to do something, and I even had the urge to do it because that's something I have a Yetzirah for, and this time I don't do it. So by not doing it, I'm destroying the body of the klipa. We have a problem with that. What's the problem? Imagine every Aveira I do, I have to go find and set up the same circumstances, not do it this time, and that's going to be my tshuva. First of all, it's impossible. We'll be busy all day long, going here and going there and trying to set up the same circumstance of an Aveira that I did last time. So first of all, it's just not even practical, it's not even possible. And second of all, is that what I'm going to spend my time on? And the bigger question is, if a person puts himself in the same circumstances, how can he be sure that this time you're really going to do tshuva? You're basically setting yourself up that you might, chas v'shalom, do the Aveira again. You know, when you're davening and you think, I'm going to do tshuva, I'm going to go to the same place, to the same person, and the same situation, have the same Yetzirah, and this time I won't do it. But you might end up going to the same place, to the same person, with the same Yetzirah, and you might do it just again. And we see this happens with us all the time. In the morning we say, Slachanu, I'm really sorry, Hashem, that I did this and this. Later, when it comes up during the day, I end up doing the same thing again. At you, I mean, it happens to some people. So therefore, how can it be that we have to actually try to set up the same exact circumstances of the Aveira and then undo it? And if that's the case, then no one can have a complete tshuva. So in a sense, this is Viduy Dvarim. Hashem says the following. I don't want you to go and set up the same circumstance, that you don't have to do that. But if you verbalize your regret, the dibur, being that verbalizing things is moving the lips, is also an act. So this will retract the act that I did in the negative, and the act which I did in negative becomes retracted. And if on the list is number 14, this is a quote from Gemara, the movement of the lips are considered action. Actually, this has halachic ramifications, that when a person speaks and moves his lips, that's considered action. So therefore, speaking about the by charata, by regret, is something which could substitute the body of my tshuva. What did we say before? Just like the Aveira has a soul and a body. When I do tshuva, it has to be retracting the soul and retracting the body. I retract the soul by feeling remorse. I retract the body of the klipa by not doing what I did the first time. That's not what Hashem wants us to do. If it happens, that means my Yeshua is really 100,000%. But in the Chatchila, that's not what we're looking for. Hashem says if you just speak, speech compared to feelings are also like a body compared to a soul. And if I speak and verbally I say that I regret what I did, that will retract the action that I did. And I don't have to actually go ahead and do the actual act. Is it clear? But even that's not so simple. So I have to actually verbalize every single thing that I did. Like I told you the other day, what are we supposed to do on Yom Kippur? We're supposed to sit back and try to visualize every aver that I did, and then say, Hashem, I'm sorry about this, this, and this, which means we're just going back into a negative place. Even in thought, it's not a good idea. So we have something called Ashamnu. Ashamnu is with the order of the Aleph Beis. Ashamnu is Aleph, Bagadnu is Beis, Gozalnu is Gimel, Dibarnu Defi is Daled, Havinu, Hey, V'Yashanu. The whole Ashamnu is the order of the Aleph Beis. In the Torah, and the Torah way of things, is that the first letter of a word contains the whole word in it. You probably know that one of the systems of Torah study is called gematria. And what's gematria? That you learn things from the numerical value, and sometimes in this whole area of oisius, of letters, there's this concept that the first letter of a word represents the whole word. So sometimes the Torah writes a word explicitly, writes it out in detail, and sometimes the Torah writes one letter, and that's supposed to represent the whole word. Now it's common in the secular world that they call things by their acronym. But in the Torah, this is a very big part of Torah. In fact, there's one commentary on the Chumash called Baal HaTurim. It's printed in most Chumashim. Really fascinating. He has so many of these things showing that there's a word in the Chumash, and each letter represents another word, which represents a whole concept. But that concept is not written out in detail. You just have three letters, and that represents an idea. So therefore, and by the way, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that when Hashem created the world, he created with words. And even in the process of creation, it's the first letter that's the most important. That contains all the other letters. Just like Rosh Hashanah is the first day, contains all the days of the year. Rosh Chodesh is the first day of the month, contains all the days of the month. And so many other things that the first contains everything that follows. The reason why a parsha is called by one of the first words in the parsha, because that word contains in it the whole parsha. And that's in fact why it's in the beginning. So this parsha is called Nitzavim. Today's parsha is called Vayelech. It's right in the beginning of the parsha. So that word contains in all the details, like a seed contains in it the whole tree. So therefore, when you say the word Ashamnu, it starts with an aleph. Not only does Ashamnu mean what the word means, but because I pronounced Ashamnu with an aleph, it includes anything that I could have thought or done that's negative that starts with an aleph. When I say Bagadnu, it'll include, it's as if I verbalized everything and anything that could have been done that starts with the base. So by pronouncing the whole aleph base with words of regret and remorse, it's as if I spelled out every single thing that starts with this one of the letters in the aleph base. And no matter how professional you are in doing averis, it's got to be part of the aleph base. You can't go out of the aleph base. It's definitely whatever I did is one of the letters of the aleph base. Now the same thing with al-chet. On Yom Kippur, we went over the Machzor, there's al-chet. So al-chet is also, I did this aver, we spell out the averis, but you'll see it's also in the order of the aleph base for the same reason. We spell out a specific avera, but really because it starts with an aleph, we're also including any other avera or any other thing that was done wrong that could start with an aleph. And the same with the base, and the same with the gimel and everything else. And by the way, this is also an explanation Remember, we spoke about the fact that a lot of the prayers on Rosh Hashanah and the Magzir are in the order of the alphabets. On the surface, it's like more poetic. It's in the alphabets order. It's nice, has a certain structure to it. But the deeper reason is the same thing. That is a certain prayer, we're saying something, but because it's in the order of the alphabets, it means that when I say these words, in it is also included many more prayers which I don't pronounce, but they're included in the aleph. There is a one of the prayers in the Machzor when we do Yom Kippur, I'll show it to you inside, is what was the tefillah, what was the prayer that the Kohen Gadol prayed for all of Klal Yisrael on Yom Kippur? And it says, he asked that the Yidden should have all the brachas, and he pronounced all the brachas with the order of the alphabets. It should be Shnas Oira, a year of light, Shnas Bracha, a year of blessing, Shnas Gedula, a year of greatness, Hey, Vav, the whole alphabets. The Rebbe, in fact, many years when he gave a bracha for Erev Yom Kippur, he would use that and sometimes add one word or a different word, but it was always with the order of the alphabets. Why? For the same reason. If the first letter, it concludes everything else that comes along with it, when you're talking about an Aveira, the same principle applies with bracha. When you give all the brachas in the alphabets, maybe you've heard people sometimes giving a bracha and they say, all the brachas from Aleph to Tov. What do they mean? It's not just all the brachas from the beginning to the end. They mean to say all the brachas that could be spelled with an Aleph, all the brachas that can be spelled with a Beis, all the brachas that can be spelled with a Gimel. So even though you're only pronouncing limited brachas, but it includes much more than what's being pronounced. Got it? There's a story related to this whole concept. It's a story with the Baal Shem Tov. From the story, we see something amazing about the Baal Shem Tov, but also we see what it says here in this Maimer. The story is that there was once, it happened from time to time, I wouldn't say very often, but from time to time, the Baal Shem Tov would tell the students, we're going somewhere. They had no idea where they were going, why they were going, how far they're traveling, but we're going, and they knew that something's going to happen for a specific purpose. Sometimes they knew what the purpose was, sometimes they never knew what the purpose was. They went, they came back, they didn't know what it was about. So this time, Baal Shem Tov had them go to a certain city, and it was a Friday afternoon, and they said to go into this inn to ask if Baal Shem Tov and his students could be there. He said, yeah. He was very excited. The Baal Shem Tov would come to him. Then the Baal Shem Tov said to ask him if we could also invite a guest. Generally speaking, there's a saying, Ein oirach machnes oirach, which means a guest doesn't invite guests. The master of the house invites the guest, not the guest. But here the Baal Shem Tov asked him, is it okay to bring in a guest? Yeah. So who was the guest? The Baal Shem Tov told the students to stand on the road. And if he sees someone coming right before Shabbos and doesn't have a place to stay, he should come into this place. Sure enough, there was someone there right before Shabbos. He asked him, do you have where? So he's a traveler. So he asked him, do you have where to stay? He says, no, I'm not from this town. I'm traveling. So he said, so come stay with us. He was more than excited to come stay with them. They're sitting by the Friday night meal, and the Baal Shem Tov turns to this guest and says, no, maybe you'll give us the Dvar Torah. So he says, I'm not such a learned person. I never studied Gemara, I don't know. Well, Shem said, it doesn't have to be Gemara. Say something from the Mishnah. I really didn't study Mishnah either. Okay, say something from Chumash. I really don't know Chumash well enough to be able to say the Torah from Chumash. Okay, and then the Baal Shem Tov stopped. By the Shabbos meal by day, again he turns to him and says, no, maybe you'll say the Torah. Sorry, I'm not a scholar. I don't know any Gemara. So the same thing repeats itself. No, say something from Mishnah. I'm sorry, I don't even know any Mishnah. So say something from Chumash. I'm really sorry, I don't even know Chumash that well. Again, he stopped asking him. When it came to the third meal, the Shalashudis, and the same thing repeated itself, when he said, I don't know Gemara, and I don't know Mishnah, and I don't know Chumash, well, Hashem said, so tell us a story. He says, yeah, I can tell you an interesting story. And he tells them the following story, that he was having a very hard time financially, and he couldn't pay his rent, and he had to move out of his apartment where he lived. He didn't have where to be. He was homeless. And he looked to where he can just have some sort of shelter. In the town, there was a house there that no one lived there. It was a house that was, just neglected for many years, broken down place. And he thought maybe he'd go in there, at least it'll protect him from the rain. The only problem was that there were rumors that this is a house that at night they hear voices in this house. And he wasn't too excited about that. But he was a little bit desperate. So he said, I'll be there. If anything really frightening happens, I can always run away and leave. So he went and lay down to go to sleep. And in the middle of the night, he started to hear voices. Didn't see any people, he heard voices. And I guess he was really desperate. So he said, well, as long as nobody's bothering me, I'll be here. I'll brave it out. By the way, I have to add, in non-Jewish literature, these are all what we call Baba Mises, ghosts. And in Torah, it's not a Baba Mise, it's very real. There's halachas that was established because of this. And it's also known that there were certain Kabbalists that they, a few hundred years ago, made it that it's impossible for them to go to places where there are people and that they should sort of reveal themselves to people. But in times of Gemara, there was, even after Gemara, in the times of the famous story with Rabbi Yoel Baal Shem, in his times, and they say that he's one of the people who made an end to it. There's a story where people were in a place and they saw these creatures, these creations, and it affected them. They became mentally ill, physically ill, all sorts of crazy things happened. So in Torah, this is something which it's called a shade, shindalad. But really, what are these things? This is another form of klipa. These are evil forces, negative forces. When a malach reveals himself, brings bracha. We know all the stories. Friday night they come to give bracha. They came to Avraham Avinu to give bracha. Other stories. But these klipas, when they reveal themselves, it brings destruction and causes the opposite of bracha. So he heard voices, and he decided, unless anything really urgent happens, he's going to stick it out. And Taka, there were voices, nothing happened to him. He slept through the night, and he got used to it. He slept there every night. Friday afternoon, right before Shabbos, he said the voices became very intense. It sounded like crying. A little bit frightening. And then right as Shabbos, right before candlelighting, the moment before candlelighting, it switched and became like, the sounds became like someone was laughing. And he heard this. he managed to handle it. The next week, again, the whole week, there's voices. Friday afternoon, again, he hears crying. But right before Shabbos starts, it switches from crying into laughing, and everything goes back to the normal. And again, another week. He was there for quite some time. And he, after a while, said he decided it's time to move on, to look for some sort of way to set himself up normally. And he thought this would be his last week. That Friday, he heard such crying that even compared to everything he heard before, was not. He said he was so frightened, he thought he'd have to run. And then right before Shabbos started, sounds were rejoicing sounds like you never heard before. And he decided, listen, me and these guys have been living here peacefully until now. Maybe I'll ask them what's going on and I'll get an answer. And he got an answer. He heard the voices explain to him who they were and what they were. And they said they are klipas that were created to a certain individual that did a lot of averos. And why they're in this particular house, I didn't get an explanation. Maybe the person lived there once. And they said that this person became about tshuva. And once he became a Batshuva, all the klippas that he created were destroyed. They all died out. The whole family never died out. All the klippa family. But what kind of person did he become? Not just a Batshuva. He became a person that he sat and learned and davened all week. He was in shul all week. And in fact, he would fast every single day of the week until Shabbos. Shabbos, you're not allowed to fast on Friday because you're not allowed to go into Shabbos fasting. So he would prepare for himself a glass of milk, that this milk would be to break the fast, so he shouldn't go into Shabbos fasting. Right before Shabbos, he's about to get the milk, something happened and the milk spilled. And he got very angry at whoever it was, why the milk spilled. Now he can't go into Shabbos where he wants to. From him getting angry, we had enough chayas to continue living. If not for that, we would have been finished. So the reason why you heard the crying at the end of the week is because he was living such a amazing life, davening and learning a whole week and fasting, that through his davening and learning and fasting, everybody was dying out, and just a few of us were left. And therefore, by the time Friday came, we felt this is it. They're dying out. But because he got angry, that gave them chayis again, and that's why you heard the rejoicing. This went on every single week. What happened the last week? So that the last week, the final week, he, after a while, began to suspect that maybe this is what's going on. It's not normal. Every week, and dafka it happens with the milk, nothing else. He loses the milk, he's davening and learning, he's leading a very beautiful spiritual life, and dafka on Friday afternoon, he loses his temper and he messes up. Of course, he didn't see all this, but he thought that maybe this is the reason. So he went and he hid the milk. He locked it up in a closet because the Gemara says that these forces don't have any control over things that are hidden from the eye. That week, that's the week that you heard screaming and crying as if this is really the end, because we had no way, no access to the milk because it was hidden. Right before Shabbos, his wife has a knock on the door, and I'll soon explain that part too. And someone says to her that I have a load of firewood here, and I want to sell it. Normally this firewood, it lasts for a whole winter. It should cost you 100 ruble, but we're really desperate for money now. I'll sell it to you for 3 ruble. It's like you're telling somebody that you're getting heat for the winter for free. So she went to get the money, and the closet was locked. So she ran to her husband, told him that she has an opportunity to get this, and the money ain't going to win. They're going to save so much money. He gave her the keys. She went to open the door. And when she opened the door, somehow the milk spilled out again. The husband came home. He was furious. He did this and did that, and the milk spilled. After he finished telling the story, the owner of the inn where they were spending Shabbos turned white and he fainted. So what happened was that Baal Shem Tov said, apparently this person was the person that it was happening to. He was the Baal Tshuva. He had no idea what was going on behind the scenes. So Baal Shem Tov put these two people together. This one who got the story from his klippas that he created, and he heard the story, so he fainted. So what you see from the story is a number of things, like I said. First of all, the Baal Shem Tov. Here he sees what's happening with his Baal Tshuva. These are not people living in his town that he's meeting with them. Here he sees what's happening with this person who's in some homeless situation, and he's what's going on in a building. So you see that it was tzaddik of the Baal Shem Tov's eyes were open, that they saw everything that was going on around the world. On the other hand, you see from this that what we learned in the Maimer, that when you do an Avera, it gives chayis to klipa. And one of the things that are bad about that is that the klipa, it generates more klipa in the world. And specifically for me, that's why one Avera leads to another Avera. And by the way, we can see from this that losing your temper is a food's supply for klipa, a week supply for sustenance for klipa for a whole week. So this is basically what it says here, that when a person does an Avera, you are creating klipa, a nefesh, and a guf, we want to destroy the nefesh and the guf, and therefore we have to do both. Number one, regret, remorse, that retracts the neshama of the klipa that was created. Number two is verbal confession, that helps retract the actual physical, not the physical, but the body of the klipa that was created. And therefore, by doing both, the whole entire klipa is gone. Now you might ask a question, if the body is there without a soul, it's anyway useless and it's anyway harmless. It's just a body without a soul. Yes, with the human being, it's harmless, but with the klippas, obviously, when we say a body, it's not the physical body. It means it's still a certain force. It's not as forceful as the soul, but it still has a certain force and a certain energy. And in order not to generate anything negative, we have to get rid of both. Let me just show you how this is related to all these words on the page. So first of all, number two is the word pagam, causes a defect. Number three is more what we were talking about now, uniquely chitzainim. It provides nourishment for klipa. When we do an avera, it's like we're taking the chayis that's supposed to go to kedusha, and I'm causing it to flow to klipa. It's like a person should go to a oil tank, and this oil tank is supposed to be to put oil into airplanes and cars and vehicles. And then you have an enemy that needs oil for his tanks, an enemy for oil for his vehicles of destruction. And he finds a way to attach a pipe to it and get oil from my oil tank to give him oil so he can fight me. That's mamish what's happening. A unique lichitzein, when I do an avera, I'm giving chayis to klipa. I'm taking the chayis of kedusha that I have, and by doing an avera, I'm giving nourishment to klipa. Number 5 is that the klipa has a nefesh, a soul. No, the avera that I do has a soul and a body. Nefesh achet and guf achet. And so too, when I create a klipa, the klipa has both. Number 6, nefesh klipa and the guf klipa. So this is another meaning to the word. Number 7, b'chatasi nagdi samid. We have this pasuk in Tehillim. We say it at night before going to bed in the Shema Kishma Shalamita, which says, "And my sins are always before me." One of the meanings of these words are that when I do a sin, I create a klipa, and that klipa continued. The sin that I did is gone. I did it once upon a time, and I'm doing it again. But the klipa that was created is always there, and that causes me harm. Number 8 is a pasuk. Those of you that have the book, you can look it up. It's in the book. It's on page 18. It's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu where he says, "Tiyasreich ra'osech." The bad that you will do will come back to sort of harm you. Like sometimes people do something bad, and they intend to hurt someone else with it, but at the end it backfires, and you're going to be the one that's going to get hurt from what you did. Like the Gemara tells a story of a person that owned a field, and there were a lot of rocks in the field, and he wanted to clear the field, so he took all the rocks and threw it on the road. He didn't care. And then later he lost all his money, and he was poor, and he was traveling from one field to another to see what he can get. And then he tripped and he fell and he hurt himself. Where did he fall? He tripped over those rocks that he put out on the road. So it means that when I do something wrong, a person digs a hole in the ground that someone else should fall in and get hurt, Chas v'shalom, he himself will go to that hole in the ground and fall down. Like Haman, he built the gallows to hang up Mordechai. He himself ended up getting hung on the gallows. But the deeper meaning to this words is that your own bad will torment you. Means when I do something bad, I create klipa, and that klipa torments me. That klipa will try to get me to do more averos. This is similar to another pasuk, number 9, Payil Adam Yishalem Loi, which means the bad actions of a person will pay him back. So number 12 is being that tshuva is regret for the past, feeling remorse for the past, kabbalah laba, acceptance for the future. So the remorse and the regret for the past, that's what retracts the pleasure that I had when I did the Avera. That's what destroys the soul of the klipa. And the words that I say, the verbal confession, that's instead of the act. That retracts my act. Number 14, akima svasav, the movement of the lips are considered action. Number 13 is the term from Gemara that the Gemara says the ultimate tshuva is that a person finds himself in circumstances where he meets the same woman that he committed an Avera, and this time, instead of doing the Avera, he refrains from doing the Avera. That's the ultimate tshuva. But again, this is only if the Eibishter himself sets me up. But we're not allowed to put ourselves in the circumstances which are going to be a nesayu. It's going to be a test. 16. So this is again the deeper meaning of Golus Hashchina. What it means is that when I do an Avera, I'm drawing down godliness, and this godliness becomes sustenance for Klippa. And that's Golus Hashchina. And also we learned about the Hey of Hashem's name, that when I do an Avera, I'm drawing down from the Hey of Hashem's name. Now, on the other side of the sheet, you also have it in your booklet. The booklet is, those of you who have the booklet, is page 17. First of all, here you have the pasuk v'chatasi nagdi samid in the bottom. What? You don't have 17? So let's turn the page. Maybe it's the number. That page. Yeah. What page is it about you? 17. Oh, it is 17. Okay. I guess I'm just pointing out the idea that when we do an Avera, it causes a defect in one of the letters of Hashem's name in general. So this is something which only men say by the Shema, because it's about Avera that relate to men, tefillin, tzitzis, and so on. But if you look at the words, it says, I don't know why I guess the copy machine was not paying attention to what it's doing. So the copies are a little bit crooked. What does it say? I'm asking Hashem, I caused a defect in the letter Yud about your great name by neglecting the Shema, and therefore I'm going to do this, and I'm asking that it should be corrected. Or I defect in the letter Hey of your great name by neglecting Tefillin. Or I cause a defect in the letter Vav by neglecting Tzitzis. Or I cause a defect in the letter Hey, the last one, by neglecting davening. See, every Avera fits the letters of Hashem's name, that's called the defect. But part of the defect is that as a result of that, I'm causing a sort of a leak. That godly light and godly energy that's supposed to be flowing to a godly place instead flows and gives life and vitality to Klippa. Now again, if you're thinking of the question, but these Klippas, what does it mean that they actually heard them, saw them? So the truth is, Klippa is something which is an entity that's not physical, and therefore you can't see and you can't hear. But there are times, for whatever reason known to Hashem, that they are able to reveal themselves. Like I told you, the Gemara writes that there's a certain part of davening Ma'ariv that was added. In Chabad, we don't have that, but in other davenings, they have something added. So people shouldn't walk home alone at night, because when you walk alone in the dark, you might end up meeting one of these forces. So obviously in Gemara, this is something which is very real. And there are times where they are revealed and times where they're not revealed. And when they are revealed, they cause destruction. So there's a similar story with the Alter Rebbe. That the Alter Rebbe said that he once went somewhere, he was traveling with his Rebbe, the Mazur Magid. His Magid took his students and they traveled somewhere. They went to an inn. And they came to this inn. It was full of peasants. They were all wild. They were all drunk. And they were screaming at them, calling them names and cursing them. And it was really, very frightening. But he said, as the Mazur Magid walked in, some of them disappeared. They just left. And Magid did not pay attention, as if they didn't exist. Then Mazur Magid said, let's daven mincha. As he started davening mincha, he said, Ashrei, more of them left. In other words, the numbers were getting less and less and less. And by the time it got to the end of Asher, almost all of them were gone. Just a few small young peasants who were screaming and shouting and really in a very, very coarse way at the Magid, and eventually they also left. After the davening was over, Mr. Magid went over to talk to this innkeeper. And the story is also told to bring out another point. The other point is that it says in Chassidus that one of the reasons why the Yetzer Hara gets a person doing Avera, he convinces him no one's ever going to find out. No one's ever going to know. If he would know that people would be aware of what he's doing, he wouldn't do the things that he did. But he's convinced no one's ever going to know. And one of the reasons why this is foolish is because very often I myself am the one that make it known. People don't realize that when they talk, and they actually give themselves away. And as illustrate this idea, this story is told. So the Maggid said to him, well, how's life? How's Parnasa? And he asked the Maggid, Parnasa, he had an inn. It's a place where people come to drink and then to eat something. And he said, I haven't had customers in a very long time, which was puzzling because they just saw the place packed with peasants. And says, how's everything with you and your family? He says, Baruch Hashem. Then he said in Yiddish, in English, it's not expressed that way, but in Yiddish, it could be expressed that way. He wanted to say, I married off my son, so he said, I took to myself a daughter-in-law. The Rebbe said, you took to yourself a daughter-in-law? What do you mean you took to yourself a daughter-in-law? And he repeated it once, then he repeated it again, repeated it a third time. Then the person turned white. And he said to him, yeah, admit what you did. You have to do tshuva. And it turns out that he committed a sin with his daughter-in-law. And the Alter Rebbe said, what turned out to find out later was that all what they saw weren't really peasants. These were klippos that were created from his averos. But there were 3 averos involved in what he did. First of all, he was living with a woman that's married. Second of all, he was living with a woman that's his own daughter-in-law. That's a separate avera. And third of all, the avera that she was nida. And he said all the klippos were created from his averas. And in fact, those that stayed to the end were the worst klippos, the hardest to get rid of was the one that were created through nida. And the Alter Rebbe says, I was wondering, there were so many people in the inn and there were no horse and wagons parked outside. How did that fit? Then he understood that. So if they were really klippos, how were they able to see them? So the answer is normally you don't see them because there are klippos all around. We don't see klippos, and especially now. But people like the Alter Rebbe had the ability to see these things, and they appear as if, just like with the story with Avraham Avinu. When the angels came to him, what do they look like? They look like regular people. He wasn't even aware that they were angels until later. And the same with other stories of angels that appear to people. Angels normally don't appear to people. When they do appear, they look as if they were regular people. Anyway, the main point in this is to understand the positive end of it, that tshuva is something that when a person does tshuva, ultimately we get rid of everything. We get rid of the consequences, that goes without saying, and we also get rid of anything that was created and damage that was done through my avera. When I do tshuva, all that damage is corrected. And one of the ways is through verbal confession. That's why it has to be verbal confession. Any questions on this? Yes.
It's not so much about like Viduy and what we were. I read somewhere that like we thought something about like water, like the bodies of water, cups of water, I don't know, any water, and you were saying how when he like hid the milk, it can be like when what they can't see. So that way, like you're not supposed to take a drink of water with a cup that was like open overnight. And does that come from like, I don't know.
Again, I don't know if it's a general rule about water, because on the contrary, what is it what purifies a person? Is water, mikveh. That's the ultimate purification.
Right.
And on the contrary, it says that a lot of the biggest prophetic visions took place by the water, like Kriyas Yamsuf or other stories in Tanakh, where they write, I was standing by this and this river, and Hashem appeared to me and spoke to me. But certainly water is the opposite. Water is what we clean our hands, wash our hands with in Til Shadayim and mikveh. So there is something about drinking water. I don't know how it works and when it works, but if you see videos of the Rebbe, for example, when the Rebbe was given a glass of water, he would pour out a little bit from the top.
Yeah.
And it says there's some sort of klipa that's obviously, it's not something which is that effective to the extent that it should be a halacha. You're not allowed to drink. Obviously, it's not the halacha. So if it's not halacha, it means it doesn't really apply to everybody. Nevertheless, Chassidim follow the Rebbe, and they also pour out a little bit of the water. Why is it on top? Why is it when you drink? Where does it come from? What's the cause? I don't know how that works. But there are certain things that are pointed out that this is that there's klipa there.
So when you're talking about how these were, like how the person was hearing these voices in the house and how you're saying the Tanakh Gemara was like a really real thing about like Kabbalists and things and people like got rid of it. So you hear stories of today, like a haunted house, it's just like us.
Right. Generally speaking, they don't have the power to reveal themselves to people today. I mean, of course, people are just spooked out from stories that they read, but most likely it's not something which I mean, again, every rule has exception to the rule, but in general, they have no reshus. In other words, they don't have the permission to be revealed to humans today.
So there's like
What?
so it's not like a place like haunted house and okay.
Right.
What about I heard of you can't like buy an abandoned house, like if it's like if no one has been lived like a few years. Is it because klipa?
Right. It means that these are places where klipas are found, but not necessarily they're able to see it. Again, if it's found there, then it could affect us in a certain way. It's that we have klipa in our hands when we don't wash negavasa, but I don't see it. I don't even feel it. There's a story with someone that came to a chassid and said, obviously he was once religious and then he went off and he said, they were telling us that when you don't wash negavas, there's klipa on your hands. I haven't washed negavas in ages and I don't feel any klipa. So he said to him, that's the klipa. The fact that you don't feel any klipa, you become desensitized to kedusha, that is the klipa affecting you. So basically, we know there's the klipa on our hands, but we don't see it. And even food that's not kosher, what does it mean not kosher? There's klipa in it. But I don't see anything in the food that's any different, this piece of cake than a different piece of cake. We just know that this is kosher, this is not kosher. So we know there's klipa there. So there are places and things that we don't do, but we don't see it like in these stories. Okay, now I wanted to go to another subject. I don't know how long I'll be able to do this today. It's a hard day to teach, so long, especially when you're not scheduled, especially, but we'll try our best. One of the things that I want you to turn to page 10. One of the things that the Rebbe says, which in a way is sort of revolutionary. Remember we said that Igeres HaTshuva introduces the fact that there are two kinds of tshuva, tshuva tata and tshuva ilah. Tshuva ilah means a higher level of tshuva, and generally speaking, it usually relates to tzaddikim. What am I saying? That the Rebbe said that's so unusual. When the Rebbe would speak to us and tell us to do tshuva, every Yom Kippur give a bracha for tshuva, the Rebbe would say, and in our generation, we do tshuva ilah. Tshuva ilah? How could that be? I mean, even in previous generations, an ordinary chassid would never say, I'm up to tshuva ilah. Tshuva ilah is for tzaddik, and tshuva ilah means once you've already completed the lower level of tshuva, then you go to a higher level of tshuva. But if you haven't completed the lower level of tshuva, how could you say that you're up to tshuva low? So the answer is there are a lot of details to the difference between tshuva and tshuva tata. One of the details is the main detail that why would I identify our tshuva as tshuva law, and that is like this. What is the difference between tshuva and tshuva tata? We didn't get to it yet in the Geras tshuva, but we will. One of the main differences, tshuva tata is doing tshuva for averis. The person does an avera, did something really negative against Hashem's will, and I want to do tshuva. What's tshuva ilah? So tshuva tata is going from bad to doing good. Tshuva ilah is for someone who's already only doing good. There's no bad, doing good. So what does tshuva mean? Tshuva means going from good to better. Going to a higher level in Kedusha. Loving Hashem more than I loved him before. Fear Hashem more than I feared him before. Doing a mitzvah with more fire, with more passion than I did before. So it's not going from bad to good. I'm already good. I'm going from good to better. But there's a question to why is it called tshuva? Call it something else. Call it growth. Call it advancing in Yiddishkeit and Torah mitzvah. It's not tshuva. Why do we even call it tshuva? Anyone remember the answer? I did give the answer briefly. If you don't remember the answer, it's not a problem. I'll have what to teach now. Anyone remember the answer? No? So look on page 10. Page 10 is a pasuk there. I did mention in the beginning when we started against the tshuva that this is one of the issues why Misnagdim, one of the reasons why Misnagdim came out against the Alter Rebbe, they felt that he was being disrespectful to Torah scholars. Because the Alter Rebbe said even Torah scholars have to do tshuva. But they didn't understand. The Alter Rebbe wasn't talking about the ordinary. He's not suspecting them, accusing them of doing averis. He meant to say tshuva ilah. But the question is, why is it called tshuva? It just should be considered growing in Torah and growing in mitzvahs. So the answer is, there's a pasuk, number 4. Baruch Toshav Elokim Asher Nasana. Where is this pasuk? So this pasuk that you see is here on page 10. Let me show you where the pasuk is in original source on page 13. It's a pasuk in Koheles, and it says, "V'yoshev ha'ofer al haaretz k'shahaya." Person ultimately returns to the earth. Haruach toshav elokim. The spirit goes back to God. Asher nasana, that He gave him the spirit. In other words, the body goes back to the earth, but the spirit, the neshama, returns back to Hashem that gave it to him. So the Alter Rebbe says like this. This is really the thrust of tshuva ilah. The tshuva ilah means, why is it called tshuva? Because the truth is, even a person who's a tzaddik, that's davening and learning and doing mitzvahs on an amazing level, it still doesn't compare to what the neshama experienced before it came down to this world. We know that before the neshama comes down to this world, the neshama is also living a spiritual life in Gan Eden, and the neshama is basking in Hashem's presence. The neshama is understanding the greatness of Hashem. Being that Hashem is infinite, the neshama is constantly going higher and higher in understanding Hashem's greatness. If it understands Hashem's greatness more, then it has more passion every day. That's the neshama's life. When the neshama comes down here, even if the neshama loves and fears Hashem and has passion, all that, it doesn't compare to what it was Lamaila. And the Alter Rebbe gives an example and uses this pasuk. It says that Avraham Avinu said about himself that I'm like dust and ashes. What does it mean? Alter Rebbe says, imagine you have a table or a building and it gets burned down and now you have a heap of ashes. The heap of ashes are not something new. It's the table that was here before. It's the building that was here before. But could you compare the ashes to what was here before? No comparison, no words to compare. So Avraham Avinu said about himself that his neshama is a manifestation and evolved from chesed of atzilus. And that's why he was the epitome of kindness. And that's why his avodah was to love Hashem in an unconditional way. And who could compare to the love that Avraham Avinu had? So Avraham Avinu said, the love that I have compared to the love in the source where I'm coming from is like ashes compared to a table. So it means that what goes on up there before the neshama comes down is infinitely more than what we experience down here. And that's why it's called tshuva. When a tzaddik, a person who's serving Hashem properly, makes an effort to feel more love and not be satisfied with what I had yesterday, to understand Hashem deeper, have more passion, more awe of Hashem than I had the day before, what I'm doing is I'm returning to the way my neshama was before it came down. So it's really called tshuva. So look at the words again. Haruach toshuv, the spirit returns to Hashem that gave it, means even while you're alive, doesn't mean when a person passes away. When a person's alive, the neshama is returning to feel and experience and be on that level that it was before it came down when it was given by Hashem. So one of the differences between tzaddikim and ordinary people is ordinary people do tshuva, they're brokenhearted. They feel remorse, they regret. Sometimes they feel repulsed by themselves. How did I do such a terrible thing? Tshuva ilah, no such feelings. Tshuva ilah is with simcha. Because this is a person that didn't do anything bad. And now he's experiencing Hashem on a greater level than before. So tshuva ilah is a person who's bursting with simcha that he's serving Hashem and becoming closer than he was before. And this is what the Rebbe emphasizes. But how could we be that way if we're doing the regular tshuva? So the answer is, and I'll soon show you something incredible insight from the Rebbe about this. The answer is that in tshuva there are two parts. One part is remorse for the past, which we just learned about. And the other part is kabbalah l'haba, resolve to change in the future, to do things right in the future. What it means that we can work on tshuva ilah means that our tshuva should be mainly focusing, the main focus should be about the resolve to improve in the future. And that's something which should go along with simcha and with excitement and with inspiration and not with a broken heart. The broken heart is when you focus on the past, when you focus on the future and how you're moving forward. So this is something which really every person on their level could do that. When I'm thinking about my tshuva, I'm focusing more about, I'm taking on my davening, my learning, my other mitzvahs, my being in control of my passions and my impulses that I have, controlling my anger, other things. And I'm excited that it's going to be a much better life for me. I'm going to be closer to Hashem. And it's supposed to be Tech Simcha. So I want to show you a mimer, which is a famous mimer. It became very famous because of these lines in the mimer. And to the extent that actually Sichos in English ended up printing this mimer with Hebrew and English. When I actually put the book together, it did not exist. So I only have the Hebrew. So you'll follow me in the Hebrew, but downstairs in the library, we actually have the English edition. And what's so amazing about this mimer is like this. Everyone knows that the Rebbe's, his kashas, the Rebbe's connection to the Frierdiker Rebbe is something which is beyond. Anything the Rebbe said, anything the Frierdiker Rebbe did, anything the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about, the Rebbe was passionate about it, and not only passionate about it, took it and actually expanded it and spread it even more than in the times of the Frierdiker Rebbe. Frierdiker Rebbe introduced chitas. If you look at the Rebbe's letters, every letter he sends to people, almost, I hope you're doing chitas, make sure to do chitas. In order to get your bracha, do the chitas. Anything the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about, the Rebbe took that and developed it 100 times over. You don't find something where the Rebbe would say the Frierdiker Rebbe said this, but I'm saying something different. One exception is this subject. At the Rebbe's wedding, the Frierdiker Rebbe said a mimer. And in the mimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe spoke about saying Tehillim with a broken heart and tears and what that can accomplish. So you would think the Rebbe would do the same. More broken hearts and more tears. So the Rebbe repeated that mimer, gave a insight, a beer on the Frierdiker Rebbe's mimer. It was the year 1986, 1985 actually, but in Hebrew was Memvav. And the Rebbe said that this part doesn't apply to us, not in our generation. So I want to show you insight. It's underlined. Look at the booklet on page 12. this paragraph beginning of the paragraph is not underlined, but it begins by saying, you can hear the words, that the Friedrich writes that the tshuva is also found by simple Jews who are very simple in terms of their knowledge, and they become excited and they become inspired to do tshuva, and they cry bitterly, as we see that they say their Tillim with a broken heart. Then the Rebbe says, but being bitter and broken is in tshuva is not our generation. This is the generation of Mashiach. Our generation, we don't have the koyach to go around with broken hearts. What we need is strength. What we need is encouragement more than anything else. And therefore, our tshuva has to be mitech simcha. In other words, the Rebbe is saying, and we see this, people who want to go back to the way things were years ago and really get upset and feel a broken heart and cry, end up getting into trouble. They end up getting depressed and end up getting into all sorts of feelings that are actually destructive for them. Why? Because it's not for us. We don't have the courage to do that. When it says it, say Tillim with a broken heart, so it's known, the famous quote from our Rabbeim, instead of having a broken heart, trach gut v'zayin gut. Don't have a broken heart of what could, God forbid, happen, but think positive. And thinking positive will make things happen in a positive way. So therefore, in our generation, there is no such thing as merirus, or saying Tillim with a broken heart. And the Rebbe is not negating saying Tillim or giving tzedakah. We're negating the broken heart part and the crying part. But to think positive, which also includes, by the way, to think positive, Hashem forgives me, and He did forgive me, and that alone causes this to happen. Turn the page to page 12. It says in the Gersa Tshuva that Tshuva that's with bitterness, that's Tshuva Tata. Tshuva that's with Simcha, that's Tshuva Ilah. Our generation, Ikus Mashiach, after all the tzaras and after all the suffering that we went through, and suffering refines a person, suffering cleanses a person, suffering raises a person, all Yidden today are now up to Tshuva Ilah. In other words, here the Rebbe is adding a little bit of an explanation that, in a sense, Tshuva Ilah comes after Tshuva Tata. We did Tshuva Tata. Collectively, the Jewish people went through so much suffering and so much broken hearts and so much crying, and especially in the Holocaust, that now, collectively, as Jews, we don't any longer need Tshuva Tata. We've already done that. Now we need Tshuva Ilah.
Right.
Yeah.
What were the years where the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote this down?
The Frierdiker Rebbe said it at the Rebbe's wedding. The Rebbe's wedding was 1928. It does, 1928, yeah.
And so, but how many years, like what?
Well, you see, then, unfortunately, there was a Holocaust after that. So obviously that was still the generation where we needed that kind of Aveda. And the next line will also give the answer. It says in Tanya, in Agersa Tshuva, that Tshuva Tata in a bitter way should be at least once a week. When? Before Shabbos, Thursday night. But now we're already at Friday, at the end of the day, we're close to Shabbos. So therefore, Shabbos is Tshuva Ilah. In other words, on a large scale, we know that we're in the 6th millennium, which means we already had Sunday and Monday, and every 1,000 years is like one day. So where are we holding now? We're Friday afternoon. It was the year 5,700, and now it's 83, which means already in the second half of Friday, we're already close to Shabbos. And Shabbos is not the Aveda. We don't say Tachli, we're not allowed to cry on Shabbos. God forbid a person, God forbid, had the worst loss in the world. He lost a family member. They're not allowed to sit Shiva on Shabbos. They're not allowed to cry on Shabbos because Shabbos is supposed to be the Aveda. I mean, to tell a person like that to be B'Simcha is a different story. But for us, the generation, we're a Shabbos the good generation. And therefore, our Aveda is Simcha, not brokenhearted. Of course, there's a Yetzirah sometimes, and people say, I still feel that that's getting off the hook too easy. I have to feel bad. I have to really feel remorse. But that's the Yetzirah trying to get us down again. Because our Aveda is Mitach Simcha, and you come to so much more Mitach Simcha. That's basically the thrust of this mimer. And that's And that's what the Rebbe tells us is our Avodah today. So practically speaking, the only way it could be understood is that the simcha comes from the focus on the future more than the focus on the past. What about everything we said that we have to wipe away the klipa? So just saying Oshamnu and doing the technical things we do does the job. How could it be? We're not doing much. The answer is what our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents went through, their Avodah is working for us because we're all one. Remember we said that when you give an injection in the arm, it helps other parts of the body? So the Avodah of Jews in the previous generation works for us in this generation. Any questions that came up, by the way, on Rosh Hashanah? Anything you heard? Anything you saw? Anything that? What? Yeah.
Vice kids, when the trua, the three, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It wasn't like 1, 2, 3. It's like 1, 2, 3, and then like 2 little ones. And every single year I hear it, and I'm always confused. Like, why isn't it just clean cut 3?
It's not really 2 little ones. There's 1 little one.
Oh, so why don't know?
I have to confess that I don't know the source, but I know that it's dealt with. I mean, the Rebbe did it that way, and there's a source where the Rebbe takes it from. And in the book that they use here in class, which is Sheva Chamayid, and it has the halachas of Yantiv, he goes into it where the source is from. I'm just going through this booklet. We spoke about the part why today we don't fast, instead we give tzedakah. That we dealt with. Okay, let me do page 45. Oh, I think I'll take it until 12 and then I'll stop. You'll have just early redemption. What? Yeah. So in Lubavitch, we have something at the end of Yom Kippur, which is called Napoleon's March. How does Napoleon come into Yom Kippur in the shul, the Rebbe? What is that all about? So I want to give you a little bit of the history of this, what this is about. So you all know who Napoleon is. He wasn't a very big tzaddik, and that's why it's shocking that we have a song which we call Napoleon's March. And when do we sing it? On the holiest day of the year. So the truth is like this. The story with Napoleon is a long story in itself, how it's connected to the Alter Rebbe. And it's in fact connected to the Alter Rebbe's Stalkus, Alter Rebbe's passing. And a little bit later in the year, when we get to that date, which is the 24th of Teves, I'll go more into the details. But there was a war between Russia and France, Napoleon and the Tsar. And the Alter Rebbe was totally invested, did everything he can physically and spiritually, that Napoleon should lose the war and the Tsar should win the war. Not because the Tsar was a big tzaddik either, but the Tsar believed in God and Napoleon did not. And now Napoleon, like I said, a lot of the liberal ideas to this day that the world has came from the French Revolution. It wasn't just a revolution in terms of physical fighting, it was a revolution in ideology. No kings and no authority, and we're free and we're liberal. In fact, if Yidden would have been under Napoleon's rule, they would have had it easier because he opened the doors that they can go to universities like the non-Jews, and they have freedom like everybody else. But it would have brought that the whole, God forbid, world everybody in the world that would be under his rule would chas v'shalom lose their belief in Hashem. Alter Rebbe said he was the biggest klipa of that generation. So Alter Rebbe fought him. And Alter Rebbe so much said he's such a big klipa that he doesn't even want to be under his jurisdiction, even temporarily, even for a moment. So being there, he was fighting the war, and he was coming into the area where the Alter Rebbe was. The Alter Rebbe left and he ran off And the Alter Rebbe was traveling for a few months. In fact, in Gashmis, in Derech HaTeva, what led to the Alter Rebbe's passing was because he was traveling in the freezing cold Russian winters, which is very harsh, and he got sick, and that's how he passed away, because he did not want to be when Napoleon was coming. And there's more details to the story, but the Alter Rebbe promised his Chassidim, he said to them that he sees clearly Napoleon is going to be defeated. Initially, Napoleon did penetrate into Russia, and everyone thought this is it, he's taking over. And the Alter Rebbe did something very unusual. He actually made a shvua, I think with the Sefer Torah or with Tefillin. He made an oath. He said, I swear to you that he will be defeated. And this is just temporarily. But the Alter Rebbe wanted to know what was the march of victory that they sang when he went in. So they sang his march. This was the march. And the Alter Rebbe said, the Nigun is a true song of victory, but ultimately will be Didan Notzach, means our side. It's Aramaic. Didan Notzach means our side, the side of Kedusha, will be victorious. Yeah.
So I understand it's a non-Jewish tune, so
Right.
we don't normally go with non-Jewish.
Normally we don't go with non-Jewish tunes, but sometimes there are non-Jewish tunes which have a source in Kedusha. They end up in a non-Jewish place. And that's where someone like the Alter Rebbe would take the tune and bring it. And the Rebbe did the same with the Deres Vamuna, took the French national anthem and made it into a nigun, a Chassidus nigun. French national anthem, again, France doesn't represent Kedusha in any way. But nevertheless, this tune apparently has its sources in Kedusha, and the Rebbe extracted it from that place. And again, when we come to the time of the year when the Rebbe did it, I'll go into a whole explanation of why and what it means. So since then, this became a nigun, a Chassidim thing, and the theme of the nigun is Didan Notzach. We are victorious. So it still doesn't explain why we sing the nigun. And so the answer is like this. You know, there's a day in the year we call this the day of Didan Notzach. What day is that? Hey Tevis, right? Hey Tevis. We'll talk about that when that comes around. But Hey Tevis was a story that the Rebbe's Svarim, in the Rebbe's library, there was a threat to take it away, and eventually there was a court case, and the Rebbe won the court case. Before the Rebbe won the court case, because Chassidim are already used to, the Rebbe always telling us, think good, it'll be good. Someone took the words Didan Notzach, I think it was even a Bachar, took the words Didan Notzach, and he attached it to this nigun that we sing. And we used to sing this nigun before anything really happened, that the court announced that the Rebbe won the case. Later, we were not aware of it, but later the Rebbe said there's actually a source, that just by saying Didan Notzach, you could accomplish that. I have another story. Again, it must be a spooky day today. But there's another story with this, and this story is in the Medrash. The stories in the Medrash is that there was a certain town where there was sages from the Gemara that lived there, and one day one of the sages met someone, and he said to him that he's one of the forces that are in this town, and he said, I'm leaving. He's a Shindalad. In other words, he's a ghost, and he's leaving. But the one who's going to come in my place is actually, I was friendly with everybody. I didn't bother anybody. The one who's coming to take over, he's dangerous. So what should we do? So he said, these are the words in the Medrash. He said, when it comes to Hey Tevis, I give it out so everyone could read the Medrash. He said like this, tomorrow morning, everybody in town, the men, the women, and the children should go out to the water, and take with them anything that they can, shovels, axes, hammers, chains, anything that's strong and it can make a lot of noise. Go to the water and scream, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach, Didan Notzach. And scream that until you see a drop of blood in the water. When you see a drop of blood in the water, you know that he was defeated, this force. So the Gemara says they went next day, and this one took a chain, this one took an axe, and this one took a shovel, and this one took a hammer. And they went out and they were all screaming, Didan Notzach. until they saw movement in the water, and then they saw a drop of blood, and they knew that this force of Klippa was defeated. So the Rebbe said, we see from here, they're just shouting the Dan Natzach actually brings the victory for the right side. So basically, the basis for that is similar to the idea of Trachut v'Zayin. When we think the Dan Natzach and we verbalize the Dan Natzach, it happens. So Napoleon's march, because it's a march of victory, and the Alter Rebbe said that the theme of this march is the Dan Natzach, that our side will be victorious. So therefore, we were just on trial. We were on trial on Yom Kippur. The whole world was on trial. At the end of Yom Kippur, we're declaring our absolute confidence that the Dan Natzach, and not only declaring it, but by saying it and singing it, it brings down that this Nitzachah should become actual. Like a lot of the things we spoke about, that there could be things happening, good things happening, but they're in the spiritual realm. We want to bring it down to the most physical realm. So therefore, by singing the Dan Natzach and making it, and which basically means we're shouting the Dan Natzach, this brings down the bracha that our side will be victorious over the Satan who's trying to find fault and being the prosecutor against us. So the Rebbe would do something very unusual, and that is that not only he would turn around to the crowd and sing the nigun of Napoleon's March, the Rebbe climbed onto his chair so he could see everyone and everyone could see him. And he was wearing his talis and his kittel. And there's no pictures of this, there's no video of this because it's always during Yom Kippur. So all I have is a picture of my face that I had the merit, the schus, to see. And the Rebbe was waving with his hand very strong. Usually the talis ended up covering his face, falling over his face. And the Rebbe continued to do that. And after a while, what you see now in 770 is something new. It wasn't there in earlier years, that the Rebbe would daven on top of a platform, a bima. That early years, the Rebbe davened on the floor like everybody else. After the crowds grew and became very hard and people were pushing to see, the Rebbe agreed for Tishrei there should be a platform. Only Tishrei. After Tishrei, they took it apart. Tavshin Nun, 1990, which B'chlal, by the Rebbe was a very special year. The Rebbe changed a lot of things that year. The Rebbe allowed the platform to stay there after Tishrei as well, to this day. So on the platform, so the Rebbe shouldn't have to climb on the chair, they put, you'll see it this Tishrei if you get a chance to be there, they put a staircase, one of the stairs that lead up to the bima, took one of those staircases, put it there. The Rebbe would walk on top of this top step. From that point, almost everybody should be able to see, but of course you always have chachamim that they climb up and block everybody else as usual. But the Rebbe was very high, and from there he would wave with his hand. It was usually go on for a good few minutes after the whole day of fasting, and it's the Dan Natzach. And after that, the whole atmosphere from Yom Kippur, when Yom Kippur ends, it's the turning point in the whole Elul Tishrei era. Up until now, even though we're doing everything with simcha, but we're still more about tshuva and regret and malavasada, and we have to ask. After this moment, the Rebbe would walk out of shul and he would scream 3 times, Good Yontev, Good Yontev, Good Yontev, and the whole atmosphere, everything turned around. And the Yontev sort of began right after Yom Kippur was over. In fact, the custom is in Lubavitch that we have a meal after Yom Kippur is over. We wash on challah, we have a meal, and no kiddush or anything, we just wash on challah, because we're entering now the time of Yontev. To explain more about what that is, next time we have this class, I'll go a little bit more into it, what's happening. But this is how Yom Kippur concludes with Napoleon's March. I looked on the calendar. We don't have that many times that we can do Yontev Chassidus. So I'm going to start moving up a little bit, try to go into Sukkot and go into Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres. And of course, this year's Sukkot, we have something unique, and that's Hakel. This year's Hakel, and that happens on Sukkot. To be continued. I think we'll take a break now. And whoever's fasting should continue fasting easily. And whoever is not should be strong and healthy. When Mashiach comes, we'll be fasting on Yom Kippur is a question. Because Tisha B'Av, we surely won't be fasting because we fast out of, because we're upset that the Beis Mikdash was destroyed. But Yom Kippur we fast because we become like angels.
Is there a cost for that?
What
Is there a cost in it?
about fasting on Yom Kippur?
No, I think it costs $220.
Yeah, 220. Not today.
Oh, there is-
Not today. No. Rabbi Yitzchak once said the difference between Tishrei and